The Eye of Athena is the title of a story by Ezekiel Kralin. This is the latest in the chronicles of his story about the two little dogs, Flacco and Lucky, and his meth head friend who comes and takes advantage of him, and who he gives money on a regular basis for some reason at all that I still don't understand. Ezekiel Kralin wrote, Subject, Deke's rotten behavior continues. To my surprise, he did not start screeching as I departed, and all was peaceful once again. I also want to point out here, good physician, that at no point in our argument did he raise his voice, so that's an improvement. About 20 minutes later, he called up to me again. I'm leaving the dogs here, but I'm just going around the corner, okay? Sure, I called back, to see the pups leashed to his cart and settled on a comfy nest of rumpled sweaters and jackets. Then a few minutes later, is this the one I read last week? I think this is the story that I read last week. Hold on a moment. I'm going to put on some music and figure out what's going on here. I'm not going to read the same one again. I think I must have lost the one that he just sent. Back soon. Don't go away. Yes. Yeah, okay. I'm trying to stop myself from saying that I didn't actually read this last week, but I thought that I had because it's the same story over and over, and it just sort of contributes to a general feeling of déjà vu. Later on, it sort of diverges a little bit, and there are some things in it that I don't remember reading, but I'm going to continue reading from where I left off. I'm sorry. I'm leaving the dogs here, but I'm just going around the corner, okay? Sure, I called back, to see the pups leashed to his cart and settled on a comfy nest of rumpled sweaters and jackets. Then a few minutes later, I peered out the hallway window to be sure that's where he went, and there he was, my Cajun trickster, talking and laughing with another indigent. Phew! I stepped back out for a minute to pet the doggies and arrange a bulky jacket so it would cover them better, as the evening air is damp and chill. Upon seeing them rest in perfect contentment, I returned to hovel to fix my supper. Some while later, Deke returned below my window and was soon chatting away with two others. Grubby in appearance, unlike Deke, who was neatly dressed in a heavy khaki jacket, white cap, jeans, and like-new sneakers, they shared an impressively large bubble pipe. Almost a hookah, though you could still pass it from hand to hand. I want to call it a globe pipe. It was the size of a tennis ball with thick white wisps of smoke swirling within, mesmerizing on the eyes, but that's as far as I'd ever go. Here's a picture of the houseless trio. Deke is seated on the bottom left, with Flacco hunkered down upon his lap and thighs. She is always the happiest to be close to him, as his faithful guardian from all bad spirits. She's that way with me, too, and it touches my heart. Lucky is curled up in the blue lump beside the street lamp, and that colorful pile beside the open trash bin is Deke's shopping cart stuffed beyond the brim with items of questionable worth and utility. I was hoping to include in my shot that stunning globe pipe being passed around, but they stashed it before I got the chance. Almost another hour passed before Deke called me back down to return his devices, now recharged, a smartphone with a crack across one corner of the screen and a cheap black speaker in the shape of an owl, of all things, with one of its large, flat, googly eyes missing. It was lightweight for its size, 10 inches tall, 6 inches wide, and 5 deep, and that is how I knew it was cheap. You'd be lucky to get an hour of sound at full or even half blast. Maybe it was a street score, though there's still a tag on it, Dag. Hold on just a minute. Hi, Mom, you're on the air. How can I help you?
Oh, hi. I just wanted to tell you that I'm going to bed and I want to say goodnight to you, my dear.
Good night, Mom. Thanks for calling to say goodnight to me.
Okay. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Because I wrote back to you. I forgot to write earlier, because I was getting ready to do the radio show, and then I got your email later on saying that I didn't reply to you when you were worried, and wrote again.
Yeah, well, I wasn't really worried because you told me, I knew you were going to be on the show tonight, and heard you on the show.
Did you have a good day?
I had a very good day. Did you?
Yeah, normal is good for me.
Do you have any company there?
Earlier, yeah, they had a block party, and they had a whole band in here earlier. But then I showed up as they were cleaning up and going home.
Okay. Well, have a good show, honey.
Okay, thank you. Good night, Mom.
Good night, dear. Love you.
Okay, where the hell was I again? Oh, God. After watching almost 10 minutes of a video from my favorite YouTuber, CyberDemon531, Ezekiel continues. I was curious to see if Deke had finally moved on. Nope, he was still out there, but all packed up and ready to leave, with the pups atop the cart covered by a large thick blanket for their comfort. Very pleased to witness that. I returned to my workstation, but the moment I sat down, noticed the owl's single googly eye staring up at me from my bed. I picked it up and felt the adhesive backing on my index finger. No wonder it fell off, I thought. The stickiness is almost zilch. At first I figured to toss it away, but then decided to run back downstairs and bring it to Deke. When I stepped out, he was at the corner speaking with someone, so when I approached and he looked back at me, I held out the eye and said, "Here, I think this is yours." "Oh, thanks," he replied, then stuck it back on the blind owl's right eye socket that it may see again, and I swiftly departed after first giving the pups a few more hugs and kisses. Some moments after I returned hovel, a thought sprung in my mind that gave me a chuckle. The goddess of wisdom is keeping an eye on me. Subject: Thanksgiving with Deke. Pretty good overall. Though 3 afternoons before he regurgitated his hateful rant about my refusing to sit the dogs and his shopping cart, he brought up friendships again, so I queried, how can I consider someone a friend who insults and threatens me over and over for many months? He paused for a moment, but then made excuses for his foul behavior, claiming, I do so many horrible things, it's all my fault. At any rate, I ignored the absurd offenses against me, collected his gizmos, and returned upstairs, and he soon departed. When he returned that evening, he apologized for what he said earlier. I told him, no problem, it's okay. He didn't show up again till yesterday, so he skipped 2 whole days and nights, during which time I felt rather poor in spirit due to his exhausting challenges, but nonetheless worried about him and the dogs, as if that isn't always the case. Attached is a picture of him and pups outside last night. Bad enough he creates a mess half the time when he stops by, but to leave the dogs without any protection from the dirty sidewalk is disgusting. You can see them in the center where I laid down 2 sheets of white cardboard, since Deke didn't care to give them even the scantest comfort. He did later on, but it's a shame those sweet doggies are forced to lie in the middle of what most would call garbage. Some of his houseless friends showed up, including Scampy. It was a quiet gathering of several hours, and not once did Deke throw a hissy fit. He was actually friendly throughout this latest meet-up. Maybe my handing him $100 earlier had something to do with it, though that is only my making up for not giving him any allowance for the first half of the month. $130 more to go, and he's all caught up, minus the $50 I've deducted for his threatening rant late October. New doggy sweaters arrived yesterday, and since the pups were not wearing the ones I already gave him last week, I told him I have a fresh pair to put on. To my pleasure, he said, wait a minute, extracted 2 sweaters from his cart and handed them to me. Oh, you held on to them, thanks, I replied. I'll wash them tonight and bring down the new ones. It's 7 minutes after midnight, KNYO Fort Bragg. Ezekiel continues. That was when I brought them cardboard as well, so the hounds could know some comfort. I like the maroon sweaters better than the camouflage ones, since they're real sweaters, because fuzzy and thick and warmer, whereas the camis are polyester thin. I'm glad to see that Deke has friendly company most of Thanksgiving night, and that he wasn't an asshole, though I don't care for their meth-smoking, sharing the pipe again in a circle, but what can I do? Come 11:30 or so, he and Mutz departed with their new sweaters and a fresh supply of victuals and a 2-liter plastic bottle of water that once held diet ginger ale, plus $100 minus what he spent at the Chevron station while I watched Flacco and Lucky for 10 minutes. He may be back later today. I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see how things go in our next meetup. I've certainly set the bar pretty low this Thanksgiving, to be grateful for Deke not deboning my spirit on Turkey Day. Meanwhile, today my food stamp card got blocked. I attempted to change my password for my online EBT account to one that was more secure. The site accepted the new password, but when I tried to log back in, it said wrong password or username. So I tried my old password, but again that error came up. I tried the new password again, and then a page came up asking for my birth month and year, my EBT card number, and my EBT personal ID number, so I typed them all in correctly. But when I pressed login, a new error popped up that said your card is locked. So now I can't use my food stamps till I get things straightened out. But when I called the local food stamp office, a recording said, "We are closed right now. Our days and hours are Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. But it was just 20 minutes ago that I called, 1:10 p.m., and it's Friday, so I'll have to wait a whole 3 fucking days. Jeez Louise. Guess their office is closed because of Thanksgiving weekend." I also ordered 2 new collars for the hounds, which package arrived today, but it only included 1 collar. Hopefully the complaint I filed with Amazon will straighten that out. Why do I keep getting into these Kafkaesque messes? Dealing with Deke is bad enough. He is a gremlin. Well, at least I got the doggy's sweaters washed, and Marshall will be narrating another Brindlekin tale tonight, and I can now wear my new sneakers delivered 3 weeks ago, since my stub toe no longer aches, even under the slightest pressure, like from a sock. I had to wear only open-toed sandals to avoid any pain, and they're new too. Until they arrived, I was stuck with donning a pair of rubber bath slippers, even outdoors, from mid-October until those sandals showed up. During the time, I wanted to wear a sign that said, "I'm not homeless, really." And what's going on with my lawsuit? Haven't heard from my attorney since early September. Not a peep. I guess I'll wait until late next month and email her a holiday greeting and see how she responds. How blah blah reality... How blah blah realty can manage to drag things out so long is beyond this befuddled pilgrim's ken. Thanksgiving with Deke pretty good overall. Watson wrote, "Well, that's awfully generous of you to catch him up on the allowance. I don't think he deserves it, but I know you do it for the doggies." So I replied, penalizing him $50 is more than enough to put the Cajun imp into a state of shock. Watson wrote, "We hunkered down and did nothing for TG except to cook an acorn squash baked for an hour with butter and honey, followed by pumpkin pie with whiskey-flavored whipped cream for dessert." So I replied, "Why did you even do that much? Did you have guests?" Acorn squash, pumpkin pie, whiskey, blech, Chinese food to go would have been much more fun and tasty. Watson wrote, "COVID still stalks the landscape." So I replied, "That's what Cyberdemon 531 pointed out in a recent video entitled USA Flight Tracker Proves That Americans Value Bad Holidays Over Pandemic Safety and Lives. Biden telling everyone the pandemic is over is heinous. The only good thing about this is far more Trump turds will die from it than anyone else, but I feel so sorry for those with immune-compromised systems who do their best to protect themselves." Watson wrote, "A good friend of mine with an IQ of perhaps 160, teetering on the brink of homelessness, caught it and is riding it out in a motel room, so I ain't getting complacent or going maskless or sitting in a movie theater anytime soon." So I replied, "Then there's long COVID to worry about. Sad that happened to a close friend. I hope they're at least updated with all the vaccinations, including the latest covalent shot. That would spare him or her from the worst of the virus and give a faster recovery. Why the motel room, though? Does he or she share with others? I'm not taking chances either. Though Deke hasn't gotten any shots except the first one. He doesn't believe in it. Caught up in the anti-vax conspiracy. Doesn't give a flying fuck about my own health as an elder, but the saving grace for him is he lives outdoors. However, he shares his pipe with plenty of other unvaccinated houseless and does not socially distance himself one iota. Good news. I just used my EBT card to make a couple of grocery purchases, and it worked, so it's just my online account that's locked. I don't need it anyway, as the purchase receipt shows how much I have left." Anyway, Deke showed up an hour ago. Otherwise, this missive would have already been sent. He's out there now, chewing the fat with a few others. Dogs still have their sweaters on, thank Glob. Well, gotta go now and work on the 2 new smartphones he brought, and download music by 2 more rap artists he requested. Hope you have a lovely night, Watson. Watson wrote, oh, fuck, no guests. We watched a horror movie and chowed down. It was delish. I'm going to go scarf down another hunko pumpkin pie right now. So I replied, if it were blueberry pie with a crumbly top, I'd be all over it. In my world, there's nothing worse than pumpkin pie except rhubarb. So what was the horror flick? I'm finding these scary podcasts and narrations much more frightening than most movies and a great sleep aid. I like not relying on the visual facet and let my ears take over. One of the best podcast shows is Let's Not Meet. But there are many others, well, not podcasts so much as YT channels. They're fantastic. Curious Raven is one of my favorites, of course, as are Mortis Media, Dr. No Sleep, Killer Orange Cat, Let's Read, and Darkness Prevails. Watson wrote, he was booted out of his extremely unstable living situation, was able to raise enough cash to get a new room somewhere, then came down with COVID and must isolate, thus the motel room. He's extremely bright and knows more about vaccines and viruses in the human body than most doctors, so he's taking excellent care of himself and was, of course, fully vaxxed and boosted, so his COVID is relatively light, but he sounds raspy and stuffy, also has a heart condition, and is paying close attention to his lungs in case pneumonia creeps in. So I replied, geez, so sorry to hear about his predicament, both health-wise and money-wise. Watson wrote, idiot. So I replied, yes, he is, more than he realizes. Extremely difficult to deal with such a type, nor would I bother except for Lucky and Flacco. It's a very sad arrangement, but I can't dwell on that aspect or I'd go bonkers. Deke doesn't invite me to sit with the pups while he's outside. Prefers to schmooze with his street friends, and I understand that. However, I'm sitting upstairs for hours while the doggies are down there, so I never have more than a few minutes with them on any given day. They sometimes look at me with hope whenever they see me open the gate to enter, especially Flacco, with her skewed floppy ears, tilted head, and bright, joyful eyes. They don't tug on their leashes, bark, or in any other way attempt to join me inside. They accept their situation with incredible grace, sit right there, and watch me with devotion until I disappear. Deke got a really nice Bluetooth speaker this time around. He said he paid $259 for it, and I believe it. It's the size of a bread box, with a hefty weight indicating an expensive lithium battery. It's a sleek, brushed black, mostly metal, with white and green blinking lights in the front. He wheeled and dealed in order to afford to spend that much money so foolishly. He'll cough up a huge chunk of moolah for an electronic gadget he'll lose or trade away several days later, but never spend so much as a dime on the sweetest little hounds in the universe. Watson wrote, yay! So I replied, I know, right? I hate the idea of having to slog on over to the Medi-Cal office again so soon. That would be ridiculous, but I don't have to, so I'm good. How easy a person can fall through the cracks these days and wind up on the streets. It's a living nightmare that Dickens would recognize. This nation's fast become the very shithole that Trump called some other countries. Low-income people are now being denied life-saving meds, not to mention stripping away a woman's rights and declaring violence and death on LGBTs. The list goes on, like an IBM scroll of who shall be carted off to concentration camps back in Germany's Nazi era. Watson wrote, it's been excellent so far. So I replied, glad to hear it. I guess my night's going well, too, since Deke's been pretty mellow for a change, and he's soon to depart with his gizmos. It's very quiet outside, too, as it has been yesterday. Only good things about holidays, in my opinion. Only good thing about holidays, in my opinion, that it's been quiet. Well, I just stepped out for a few minutes to give goodbye hugs and kisses to the pups. Deke said thank you and wished me a good night. He'll be out there a while longer before the trio finally disappears up Market Street into the cold, dark nowhere. That was kind of a slog.